What's up, kitchen table wizards? What's up, deck brewers from all over the world? Today we'll take control. Today we do it in a stylish way because I present to you a blue-white control deck with the creature that represents blue-white control the most, in my honest opinion, the Sphinx. Nice to see you again. Thank you for visiting. Make yourself comfortable, grab a snack maybe, because it will take some time. Mostly with control decks, it will take some time. But with the Sphinxes, it will take some time in the fun way. And talking about Sphinxes, yeah, that was a meme, thank you Nora. But it's a Sphinx cat, so maybe next time put in a real Sphinx. Alright, Nora, she's our intern, and without her the channel would be a disaster. She helps me with the edits, she inserts all the memes. She's really my rock in the tough times we are at the moment. So thanks for that, Nora. Now, some of you like control decks, some of you really hate control decks. I understand both sides of the story. Now, control decks are a part of Magic's metagame, so we have to include them from time to time in our deck decks. And I do think the Sphinxes are some cool creatures as well. Yeah, Sphinxes, not Sphinx cats. Now, before we head into the deck, of course, little shout out to our partner Cardmarket. Every time I make a deck video, they throw me a voucher and then I will throw that voucher to you guys. And the only thing you need to do to be eligible for this voucher is leave a comment and tell me which Sphinx you would put in the deck. Just one thing, we're not going to add the consecrated Sphinx. Just way too powerful, guys. Come on, keep it casual. As always, we stick with this deck to our budget of $50 US. In euros, it's even cheaper. And as we play a control deck, we need some mana, so therefore I put in some more lands than I usually do. We play 25, actually 26 lands, and we start with the basic lands. We play 14 basic lands. Now for the team, I wanted the lands to reflect the wisdom of these Sphinxes. This island full of books by Adam Paquette is right on flavor. And this plains even has a Sphinx on it in the background. Getting the right colors early is extremely important for a control deck. So I play a bunch of dual lands. 3 prairie streams can come into play untapped on turn 3, and the temples are great to play early to fix our draws, and the other lands are great to gain us some extra life. Nimbus Maze doesn't only have great art, it has everything I want on a dual land. It comes into play untapped, and if you play a prairie stream on turn 1, it's just a straight up tundra on turn 2. Oh yeah, did I also mention it's not that expensive at all, so do pick this up when it's still cheap. Prof, its ability might be expensive, but it's great against combo or burn decks, or just decks with big huge creatures that attack. And Castle Ventress has 2 Temples of Enlightenment built into it, so it can scry for 4 mana. Now, having something to do on turn 2 is never a bad thing for a control deck. And these 2 mana rocks ramp us to our counters and mass removal spells. Now, I'll be playing a lot of one-offs in this deck. You know, this is my style of deck building because it makes games much more fun. But this deck also has one Sphinx that merits 2 copies. Why is that? Well, let me explain it to you. When I get my opening hand, I would love to see at least 3 lands in my hand. Now when I have 2 lands, I get a bit jiggy. I don't really like it as a control player. What happens if I don't draw my 3rd land? Then I can't play certain counter spells, some removal is difficult, and I will be dead before you know it. But this card actually helps us deal with that problem. Sphinx of Foresight has some great stats. A 4/4 flyer for 4 mana, that's already nice. And when it's in your opening hand, and this will happen 1 out of 5 times, it will have you scry 3 before you start the game. And that's a lot of value for a control deck, especially when you have only 2 lands. And each turn, it also scries 1 additional time. Another Sphinx that scries is the Curator of Mystery. It's also a 4/4 flyer for 4, and it works great with the Master of the Winds. Because when you discard a card, you can scry. And Nora?
We love to scry.
Exactly, Sphinxes love to scry. In the 5-drop slot we meet a Sphinx with amazing art. It made several top 8s in the Terra's block time, and it can also protect itself whenever it attacks.
And it scries.
Indeed. Now this one doesn't scry, but it can come back as a zombie version, and it has pseudo hexproof as well. Another Sphinx that tasted victory in the competitive Magic scene was this Dream Eater. For a mythic it's really cheap to buy as well. And it has a bunch of abilities. Flash on a creature is nice because you don't have to tap out, and you can play it at the end of your opponent's turn. It doesn't scry, but it surveils. And it bounces a non-land permanent to your opponent's hand. The Sphinxes also have a lord.
Voldemort, Voldemort, ooh, Voldemort.
Now this doesn't give all Sphinxes +1/+1, but it does something far better. Your Sphinxes spells cost 2 less, and it acts as a mini fact or fiction every turn a Sphinx enters the battlefield. 6 mana is a lot to pay for creatures, but then again you also often get very powerful abilities in return. Like with Medomai. When it attacks and deals damage to a player, you take an extra turn. Azor the Lawbringer is maybe the sphinxest of all Sphinxes. It's great versus other control decks, as it disables your opponent's spells for a turn whenever you attack. And it has a built-in Sphinx's Revelation that gets you gain a lot of precious life and draws you a lot of cards. 2 things that make a control player very, very happy. We also saw 1 Sphinx from Terros. Well, here's another one from this plane, and it's a real powerhouse. It has flying and lifelink and card draw and hexproof. So mostly when this card hits the table, and especially if you have some mana open, the following 2 things can happen. Or mana cost wise, this is the most expensive Sphinx of the bunch. And I like drawing him in the late game because its ability is just awesome. When it enters the battlefield, you can play for free an artifact, an instant, or a sorcery. So in our case, it will kill all creatures or draw us a bunch of cards. So it's another Sphinx that makes us control players happy. Unless our opponent just exiled our graveyard. Yeah, that's not fun. But there is another thing that makes us control players happy. It's evil, and you know what I'm talking about.
Nope.
Yes?
Nope.
Now, I don't want to lose too many friends with my Sphinxes. If you really want to lose all your friends, just play this deck in the top right corner. In this case, I only play 1 Arcane Denial, 1 Counter Spell, and 2 Absorbs. However, I do play a bunch of removal. Swords to Plowshares remains on my restricted list, so I only play 1 copy. Declaration in Stone is also a great creature removal spell. Dismantling Blow is just a disenchant for the control player because it draws you also some cards when you kick it. And the Detention Sphere deals with token decks or just any non-land permanent you are having troubles with. A real Sphinx card is the Warrant Warden. Stalling aggro decks on turn 2 is a great play, and in the late game it gives you a Serra Sphinx. Now, no control deck is complete without some mass removal. Day of Judgment and Shatter the Sky kill all the creatures on turn 4, and Time Wipe does the same a turn later. And you can also bounce your best Sphinx before this happens. As a tribute to the original blue-white control deck, I also included one balance. And for the same reasons, I also included this nice donut. It's especially liked by the Scholar of the Lost Trove. Now onto some card draw spells for our Sphinxes. Sphinx's Revelation was also a badass card draw spell in Standard a while ago. And lo and behold, it's actually pretty cheap right now. And drawing cards and gaining life, we all know this is what Sphinxes really like. Sphinx's Insight is a worse Sphinx's Revelation. But it's on team and a common, so why don't we just include one copy? Cylindu Vision is also one of the flip land spells we can include. I chose this one over some removal or protection spells as we don't play that much card draw. But sometimes you also want to play it as a land, especially on turn 1. And another card you like to draw when you have a lot of mana open is this one. Drawing 3 cards at instant speed is really nice, and in a rare occasion you can play it on your main phase. Because by now we know
We love to scry.
more one-offs, Bram, more one-offs. It feels like I'm building a commander deck. Monastery Siege works well with the Curator of Mysteries, and it's great versus Mono Red Burn. And to finish off the deck, here is a book that every Sphinx loves to read. The Maze Mind Tome Scries. Of course, it draws us cards and adds a bit of life. Now let's jump into the power rankings. A control deck is often as strong as the knowledge you have of your opponent's deck. So in the hands of an experienced player with some info of your opponent's deck, it's really strong. You do, however, want to play a more defensive game than an offensive game. Now, a lot of players just hate playing against the control deck. And there's a good reason for that, I understand, but just tell them you only play 4 counter spells. Because you want for your Sphinxes at least to have some friends, right? This deck is pretty strong against all the other decks. And maybe the only deck I don't like to see is another control deck. Because they probably have more card draw and more counter spells. Ew. So this was the deck, and this time I didn't forget it, Nora, don't worry. Let's see who won our card market voucher. Congrats, Lucas Perrin. Check out the information in the description on how to contact me. So this was the video. I think this is a really nice way to play some blue-white control. I don't think we went overboard, eh? We always keep it casual.
Just to keep it casual. Just to keep it casual. Times change, so stop